We are live.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Atomics Founder Hacks podcast, where we share something we've seen, something we've read, and something we've learned that's been a source of inspiration for ourselves or the founders that we work with. Very happy, as ever, to welcome Alex Moore.
Hello.
And Anthony Enright.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, chaps, I think I'm kicking us off this week with something I've seen, and I'm kind of stretching the definition here of seen. Our original inspiration for seen was real stories from real businesses, but you know, I bounced this off you both earlier, and you both said we should go for it. So this is a different sort of seen. Rules are meant to be broken.
Yes.
You know, founders like breaking rules, so we're going to break our own for this one. And something I've seen this past couple of weeks is the making of Frozen 2, which is probably a bit of a strange thing to bring onto this podcast. I don't know if you've seen Frozen 2. It is actually a great film. I thought it was really good. I was surprised. Disney don't have a great track record with sequels, but it's really good. And the making of documentary, which is actually a series, it's 6 parts, it's on Disney Plus, is quite extraordinary because they've genuinely documented the immense collaborative creative process that it takes to bring a production like Frozen 2 to life. And without spoilers, because I think it would be great if anyone listening gets a chance to watch it, I'll just share the first 5 minutes and what caused it to be inspirational for me. Is they document one of the processes they use in Disney, where the director, who herself is an extraordinary leader and human being, she has to take her rough cut of her film that she's been working on really hard for months with a huge team and show it to an audience that is comprised of Oscar-winning directors and writers of Disney product. And they sit there and they watch this film. And then afterwards they go into a little room, quite a big room, and they all sit there and they rip the director to shreds. They literally sit there going, I didn't like that. It was no good. It was rubbish. It was terrible. And she has to sit there going, yep, okay, thank you. Yep, great, thank you. And what it brought up for me, which I thought was so resonant in my experience of founding and leading businesses, is, crikey, isn't that what we all go through? You know, actually what we were watching was entrepreneurship happening. That process of everything around you hacking you down, and you're just sitting there going, yep, okay, yep, that needs to be different. Yep, okay, that needs to be different. It's a phrase that you've used, Alex, attacked by bees. And this was just to see that experience of being attacked by bees writ large, like no other. And I thought it was fabulous. And the way that the director responds to it, absolutely extraordinary, because there is not an ounce of ego in it. Every comment, no matter how cutting or savage, she just rolls with, and she takes it on board. And, you know, afterwards you see her with her team, and they're all a bit shaken up. And it's extraordinary. And then, of course, at the end they reveal this is something you do every 3 months for 4 years throughout the production schedule. So I just thought it was a fabulous thing. And it's a great, for me, it was great learning about what leadership is, and truly spoke to the heart of entrepreneurship. So I submit it to you both, the making of Frozen 2. Anthony, what do you think?
Well, firstly, Mr. Thomas, I can't quite believe Frozen has made our has made our podcast and made our blog. Although there is a point of order here in that when you talk about sequels for Disney, you quite clearly haven't seen Toy Story 2, 3 and 4,
fair.
which my boys are incredible fans of, and I have to say I am as well. But I think for Alex and I, we really resonated when we heard you talk about this, because I wonder what, and I will watch it because I'm really fascinated by what state of mind they go into when they enter into this. I guess they do it knowing what's going to happen, right? They know the process, and they know that they're going to have to come back in front of these, you know, highly successful directors and people within their field, and they know that's part of the process. So for me, I think when you know it's part of the process, I think it's fabulous. I think it's fantastic, best practice. And anybody that can put their business through that, you will come out the other. I mean, it keeps you honest, but you will come out the other side in incredible shape. I think for me, the difference being is when you start off as a founder and entrepreneur, it is exactly like you described, by being under attack by bees. And just when you think you've got it, something or somebody comes along and tears it to bits and breaks you down. So for me, I think the difference there is about, how do you overcome that without knowing that might happen? And I think the more experienced entrepreneur founder knows that's going to happen, prepares for it, much like these directors do. And as a result, you become hardened to it, but you become prepared for it, and it makes you even better. Me, the concern is for anybody new entering into it. It will happen. So how do you recover from when it happens? How do you become better when it will? And just when you think you've got it, just when you think it's about to be signed off, something else will happen. Just when you think you've got there, there's always something to keep you grounded, keep you humble, and sometimes knock you completely off your stride.
Yeah, I love it. Yes, keep you humble. That's a great point, isn't it? It's that balance between a level of perhaps founder arrogance. You've got to have a little bit of conviction to do anything, and at the same time having the humility to know when to listen. Alex, what's been your experience with this? When do you listen? When do you not?
I thought it was really interesting when you brought this one up, because we have a little meeting on Tuesday and we decide, we all put our scenes on the table and we then pick one. And all of this one made us smile. And I thought, it's really interesting that this is a collaborative creative process. I'm not a big fan of, creativity and decision by committee or anything. So when you talked about this, I found that was very interesting. How, you end up with all these people throwing their, don't do that. And what do you end up creating if you've got a design by committee? So the fact it works so well is fascinating. I also thought it was interesting when you talk about all the creative people being able to absorb all this criticism without the hint of ego. Because my little limited you've got more experience with acting creative people than I have, Ben. But my understanding is quite a lot of them have got quite big egos. So they all sound quite grown up. And this idea to take ideas from each other and not end up with this bland generic thing that's just the sum total of everyone's opinion on what something should look like fascinates me. It makes me actually want to watch this show. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of decision by committee or throwing out things to too many people in business. I feel like small teams of people working together all trust each other can get things done, and they're sort of inhibited by structure and over analysis of what they're doing, really. So I'm fascinated to see it. Not entirely convinced, but yeah,
it's a strange thing. I mean, it's definitely a learn from when I spent 10 years in the film industry, and albeit on the more sort of production end of it. But it is something the film industry does well, and particularly in America, actually. The famous story would always be that Americans kind of worked out how to do creation by committee, or collaborative creativity. Either the model of the British or European director tended to be the auteur, the sort of the one writer who would write it all, whereas the US, many of the best US productions and sitcoms have been with banks and banks of writers, and somehow it's still good. Things like Friends and Cheers, these are all written by committee. I think what was very interesting about this documentary was actually seeing the structures and processes they put in place to achieve that, because that's what it is. It's structure and process. That means that whilst you absolutely have a director who is shaping, the collaborative creativity of others can be fed into that in a way that's really clever. And I recommend you watch it, because I think it does. There's always this tension, isn't there, between the lone wolf creative. The same with entrepreneurs, perhaps. We will perhaps start of thinking ourselves the lone wolf creative, and guess what? End up at the helm of a more substantial organisation. And how do we get the best out of that organisation? Feeding in.
So just one question on that, Ben, that I've got is how does that director then, how do they collate and what do they do with that information? Is it incumbent on them that they must implement all these ideas, or is it incumbent on them to decide what they should and what they shouldn't, and everybody else in the room is like, no, it's now your choice, you decide what you take and what you don't take? Or is it, no, you must listen to all of this
Well,
feedback.
I'm on episode 2, so I think this will
Get
evolve.
on with it. Get on with it.
My wife, Tara, my wife, who recommended this to me, she's watched the whole thing, and they do go into intimate detail, very rarely for Disney, about what then happens, and it is an interesting that attitude
Intriguing.
that she as the leader projects of egoless capacity for feedback is, of course, then what the entire team does. So actually, when she then goes to the animator who's animated that scene and says, okay, we think it's not working, this is the feedback we've had, because of the culture she's created, that animator goes, yep, right, okay, great, you need to do better. And it's that complete adherence. And it is something I remember from the film industry. It is how we used to roll in those days. It's very strange. Maybe the egos you associate it with it is because once we get out of the work environment, it's like, oh my God, we've got to compensate now and have the biggest egos in the world. But while the work is happening, it can be a very low ego creative process. So fascinating.
Well, Tom Hanks talks about it, doesn't he? Where he talks about his voiceovers for Woody on bringing up Toy Story again, and how he's just an actor in a room, right? And they don't care that he's Tom Hanks. They don't care who he is. They care that he's the voice of Woody. And if he hasn't got something right, then they will keep him there and keep him there and keep him there. And generally what they do is at the end of the day where he can't land something and there's particularly something that he can't land, they'll say, don't worry, we'll come back to it. Or don't worry, it's okay. Knowing full well that they will make him do it right at the end of the day where he's been doing it for 10 or 12 hours. And they keep going till he's got it right, keep going till they've got it right. So they're searching for that perfection.
Yeah. Well, that effortless glamour on the red carpet is years of blood, sweat and tears. Just like most entrepreneurs we know took decades to become the overnight success that we know. But look, thanks guys. I thought it was a really interesting one to table for you. And shall we move on? Let's. I think we've got Red next. Who's got a Red for us this week?
Yeah, so it's my turn on Red. So I'm just going to read you something. And this is what I read at the weekend. No one else in society creates jobs like entrepreneurs do. They are the real engine of any dynamic economy. Most big companies are not creators of jobs, and government only creates jobs funded by taxes paid by other workers. So a little bit controversial, as are the things that I tend to read in the paper. But I think what I really took from this is no one else in society creates jobs like entrepreneurs. And I think the stats and the data back it up. And we know that as entrepreneurs, certainly in the UK, we're responsible for the vast majority of employment. And there's something to be really proud about, I think, from that perspective, and certainly an opportunity to really stand up and be proud. There's a lot of people that we should celebrate and be proud, in my opinion, during the current crisis. However, entrepreneurs, I think, deserve to be in that line as well. Those that have been able to keep people employed, albeit via the furlough system, or pivot, or do whatever it is to ensure their company survives and their people survive with it. And I just became really proud as I read it to go, yeah, don't forget that the impact employing people has, and the impact of growing businesses and scaling businesses, and how important that is to the lifeblood, certainly now more than ever, of the economy and the country as a whole. So it just sort of left me feeling rather proud, to be honest. And that's why I wanted to share it, and just share it with hopefully the people listening, or our one listener, who, have gone through an incredibly tough time. But to know that, fighting for your business, fighting for those jobs is incredibly important to the lifeblood of this country. So as I shared that, I know that Alex, you had some sort of thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think founders of businesses make the world go round, and it's the creativity of all the people, all those founders that are going to help find solutions to so many of the world's problems at the moment. It's not going to come from governments. It's not going to come from the United Nations or NGOs, or anything. It's going to come from founders of businesses, in my opinion. They're going to come up with problems. They're going to come up with cures to these little problems, and they will create ourselves out of this. I'm not quite sure how they're going to do it. And that's why I found it very uplifting. And it really, really struck a chord with me. And I've just seen it in so many places. So many businesses right now the businesses I'm involved with, they're rethinking how they do business, and they're coming up with some brilliant ideas. The innovation I'm seeing at the moment is quite remarkable, and makes me feel quite optimistic when I think about all those people working away, doing their thing.
I think it's a really good point. And Ben, what were your thoughts on the subject?
Oh yeah, it's a rather beautiful statement, isn't it? And a reminder. I think sometimes, well, personally, I find it hard to feel proud. You don't have time for pride. You're just cracking on with it and building something and hoping it does okay, you know. So I think it is a kind of reminder. I absolutely think that when they talk about our economy being robust, when they talk about the potential of us being creative and finding solutions and working it through, absolutely, it's entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship that's going to be at the heart of that, totally. And I guess I'd broaden it. I genuinely think entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial attitudes can be found in a lot of places, actually. And I get it in terms of the economic contribution. But there are plenty of amazing entrepreneurs that I know that are head teachers of schools that are, doing other things where they're leading in such a creative and clever way as to find amazing solutions, and taking organisations forward into the future. But I absolutely, the fact is beyond question that it is small businesses in this country that create, certainly in the UK and very likely around the world, that create the growth in jobs. I mean, the truth now is that most very large organisations are contracting. They're coming under huge pressure. All the big banks are massively under pressure from the fintechs. They are trying to become smaller, leaner. So actually, when we talk about employment, no question, it's small businesses. Small business means founders and entrepreneurs, whether it's someone with a few white vans, doing handy jobs around neighbourhoods, or whether it's the sort of celebrated unicorns that we see. I think it's all fantastic. And one of the things I love about working with you guys and doing this is seeing that appreciation in every entrepreneur and every founder, no matter what kind of business it is. There's something beautiful about it, whether it's a couple of people who are just running a small shop or a small retail outlet, or someone who successfully scaled and created something in the £100 million. I see both as worthy of equal praise and honour.
So I'm just going to take you to the sort of second half of the article, and because what we've just discussed is very much the positive side. And I'm just going to read you the second half, a quote from the second half of the article. And it talks about why founders and owners are resilient and resourceful by nature. Many are demoralised. Quite a lot are close to despair. And I mentioned this to you when we had our conversation earlier on in the week, and I suppose I just wanted to bring it up again to sort of to reach out to anybody that's feeling that. Because a lot of the work that we've all been doing separately and collectively is talking and working with those founders, right? And working out and enable them where they may not be able to see the wood for the trees. Create an environment where we can talk, where we can discuss, where we can come up with ideas, where they may not have seen a land grab, where they may not have seen a pivot. So I suppose it's just a bit of advertising here to sort of say to people, if you are in that position, come talk to us. Just come talk to us, because a discussion there may be a light bulb moment. There may be an opportunity where we're able to share with you what others have done. And share that there is light at the end of the tunnel and what the options are out there, because we know what it's like when you're really in the weeds. It's really hard to see what the solution is, especially at the moment, because it really is uplifting when you see what others have been able to do, because maybe they're in different industries and they haven't been hit as hard. But
I've seen a lot of founders in businesses really losing sleep at the moment, losing weight, look like crap. They have got the weight of the world on their shoulders. So yeah, it is a tough time for these amazing people. So nice to.
Okay, we're going to move on now to our learned, and I believe that is over to you, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, thank you. Bit of an interesting segue onto the last one. Yeah, so the learned this week was relates to a remarkable woman called Jane Goodall, or you may or may not have heard of. English lady. She went to Tanzania and went to study chimpanzees in the 1960s. She was filmed by National Geographic and became quite famous. I think she's often confused with the Gorillas in the Mist lady, but they're different. She's quite a remarkable lady, and to me, the ability. What was an amazing thing from this documentary that I watched was the ability that one person's effect can have on the world. And there's a show called Dear, which was on Apple TV, and it's about letters that these amazing people have been sent over the years, and it's the influences that they have had on all these people. So there was a particular fantastic quote that jumped out when she was talking, and it was from her mother, and she was saying that. I'll read it so I don't cock it up. My mother taught me that when you meet somebody who has a different opinion to yours, the most important thing you can do is to listen to them. And I thought that was a real gem of wisdom in this time of a lot of disparity in the world. There's a lot of conflict in the world. People don't seem to be listening to each other anymore. They live in their own bubbles, often sort of fed information that by algorithms, it just seems to chime with what they already know. The sort of mass exchange of ideas seems to have slowed down, and it's a funny old world at the moment. There's a lot of conflict, a lot of worried people in it, and I just thought this was incredibly uplifting. And just those words that her mother told, I thought it was just brilliant, and I just thought I'll write that down. I've got to talk to the guys about it this week and shove it in the podcast. So. Yeah, over to you two guys. Who would like to feedback on that one first? Ben, go for it.
I think it's a great quote. I think it's a great attitude, and the learn I took from it really was just that reminder of the sort of echo chambers that you're talking about. I think can emerge in any organisation, in any business, at any time, and that power of listening to difference, that power of bringing others in, can be such a fantastic route to kind of what we've been talking about here, which is that creative collaboration to refresh and replenish and rejuvenate the energy in your business so that you can create that future for yourself. And I think so often our instincts can be in tough times to close down, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's perhaps what's happening in the world right now is we all perceive it's such a difficult time, so our instincts might be to just shut the doors, shut everything off, and shut out that difference. I have seen founders do that in tough times and sort of go to ground. And actually, it's not as effective in my experience as people who actually, when things get tough, open the doors, invite people in, and have those difficult conversations. Or actually not necessarily having the difficult, listen to what's hard to hear, can sometimes be the way.
I don't think you have to agree with them, right? But listening is a great place to start.
Absolutely. I mean, when people don't feel heard, that's when they entrench, right? So a huge part of, I think, a responsibility of a leader is to be the one who hears. It's almost a definition, and gives that sense of feeling heard. But then equally, I love the fact that the connection in this little piece of prose was, and one person can make a massive difference. And maybe that's how, just that act of empathetic listening can be the key that unlocks that next level difference. It was very cool. But yeah, Anthony, I suspect this is going to resonate with you quite well.
Yeah, and there's several things that are going through my mind, and one is that there are two sides to every story always, and I think for me, when I'm working with individuals and they feel adamant about something and they feel hard done by somebody else or a situation that's happened, and actually, getting the other side of that story and really listening to the other side of the story, for me, is so powerful and so important, especially as leaders and founders, that you're actually getting the other side and really listening, even though they're going to disagree with you. Because it just, for me, always gives you the context that you need in order to make the right decision. And I think that's what I encourage most people that I work with, where they feel really hard done by. Just go listen. Don't go with any expectation. Just go listen.
Yeah, it's true. I think, people say, "What are you frustrated at work?" "Oh, I don't get listened to." It's not that I don't, the things I put forward don't get implemented. It's, I don't get listened to. So it's.
Yeah, and quite often we find, especially when when I'm facilitating and a session, is that, I'm encouraging debate the whole time. And actually, I had it yesterday with a group, and somebody came up and he heard what he had to hear. He then said his point of view, which was completely contradictory. Then they fed back a little bit, and it was kind of agreed within the group to go with the original discussion and not to go with his point of view. And he had no problem with it whatsoever. Absolutely none whatsoever. He just needed to be listened to.
Mm.
So actually, when I said, "Do you feel compromised? Do you feel that you've over-compromised there?" I said, "No, I just wanted people to hear my point of view. Just wanted to give the other side of the story. More than happy to go with the majority, but I just wanted to be heard." And I find that fascinating. Because for me, when I hear people that are really like trying to get me to change my mind, I kind of switch off a little bit more. I kind of shut down. It's like, stop trying to persuade me. Just I'm going to listen. And Ben, it's something that you talk a lot about in the past, in a lot of the work that we've done, is that kind of active listening. And I think if actually you're showing the signs, whether it's over Zoom or whether it's face to face, you're showing the signs that you're actually listening, and people can then calm down and just talk through a situation. That's far more powerful. I think when people are thinking that person's not listening to me, they're not taking any account. So there's a real onus, I think, on the listener, and it's something, Ben, you've spent a lot of time talking about.
Yeah, I guess I'm a fan of good listening, and I guess that comes from a sort of knowing at some level I know I'm not a great listener, and I'm not brilliant at active listening. I do sometimes drift off. And I guess, it's been one of the things I continue to work on and always will. But one of the things I particularly value, I try now very much, is surround myself by really good listeners who know me well enough to help me make sure people are heard. It's always been something that I think I'm not, perhaps as a more introverted person, I sometimes not the best at showing people that I'm hearing them. So I guess that's always where learning begins, right? Is when you get to the point of going, actually, I'm not great at this, but I'm a huge fan, and I think people who are able to do that very naturally, and those that have learned, I think are very special people, and can achieve great things purely through that, bringing that empathetic attention authentically and genuinely, and give people that sense of belonging and a feeling as though they're really important. I remember I had a friend once who met, I'm going to say it was Nelson Mandela. It may have been another great world leader. But I said, what was it like meeting Nelson Mandela? And he said, well, do you know what? For that 10 seconds, I felt like I was the most important person in the world. And I thought, isn't that strange? Because you could argue he was meeting at that time the most important person in the world, but actually the experience was, I felt that I was, because he made me feel it. And I thought that was incredibly powerful, very inspirational. I hope it was Nelson Mandela. I suspect it was.
Let's go with Nelson Mandela. I think that's a great story. Let's not spoil it. Yeah.
Guys, listen, that's been a fantastic half hour. I think we're about at time. Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, maybe one from me. Like the art of listening. That's what I'm going to go away from our excellent chat today, gentlemen. The art of listening. Anthony?
Beautiful.
it's absolutely the same for me. We know we should do it. We know we should be listening more. We know we should be listening to people around us. But do we do it? And actually, the power of just taking a step back and really listening, really understanding whether there's something to be learned, and knowing that we can get value, from other people's thoughts and opinions. It's not just about us, is it?
So, on that note, we've explored creative collaboration, whether it exists or not. We've talked about how important it is to rejuvenate and re-energize the entrepreneurial community to help us get out of these hard times. And one person can make that difference, but they need to listen. I think that's great. And thank you all for listening. Don't forget that Founder Hacks is also a regular email update. You can sign up at www.atomics.co.uk, and you can also access all of our previous musings through our blog at atomics.co.uk/founderhacks. It remains to say a huge thank you and goodbye to Anthony Enright.
Goodbye.
And from Alex Moore.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
I've been Ben Thomas. This has been Founder Hacks, and thank you very much for listening.